You ever have one of those mornings that start so quietly, you just know something's about to mess it up? That was me that Saturday. The coffee had just started brewing, the paper was halfway folded on the counter, and the only sound in the house was the soft ticking of the clock above the window. Then came 3 knocks. Not loud, not angry, just steady. But there was something about that rhythm. It didn't sound like a neighbor or a delivery. It sounded official. When I looked through the peephole, I froze. 2 men stood there in dark blue uniforms with shiny silver badges that caught the sunlight. One tall, one short. The tall one had a clipboard tucked under his arm. The other rested his hand on his belt thumb, brushing a holstered gun like he wanted me to notice. "Mr. Harlan," the tall one said, "we have a warrant for your arrest." Now I've been in law enforcement long enough to know how authority's supposed to sound. It doesn't beg for respect, it earns it quietly. But these two, their tone was off. Rehearsed. Like a couple of kids doing a play they barely memorized. I cracked the door open just enough to keep the chain on and said, "You mind showing me your IDs?" The taller guy's jaw tightened. "We'll explain everything once you're in custody, sir. This is about a city code violation." A city code violation. I asked, for what painting my mailbox the wrong color. That made him blink. The other guy, the impatient one, snapped. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Step outside." And that's when I noticed the patches on their sleeves, Metro Enforcement Division. A department that doesn't exist in this county or any other I've worked with in 20 years. I glanced down. Both their badge numbers ended with zeros. Perfectly symmetrical. That's the kind of mistake rookies or frauds make. I closed the door slowly and took a breath. My heartbeat was steady, but I could feel the heat of anger behind my ribs. I picked up my phone, hit a single contact, dispatch priority. "This is Chief Harlan," I said quietly. "I've got 2 males at my residence claiming to be law enforcement. Run a check on any warrants under my name and send units." No sirens. By the time I walked back to the door, the 2 fakes were glancing around like they were trying to decide whether to kick it in or run. I opened it again, calm as a Sunday preacher. "Gentlemen," I said, "you're with the Metro Enforcement Division, right?" "That's right," the tall one said. "Interesting," I replied, "because I've been chief of this county for 6 years, and I've never heard of you." The shorter man stepped forward, hand twitching near his fake holster. "Sir, are you resisting?" I tilted my head, smiled just a little, and said, "No, son. I'm waiting." And right then, from down the street, came the low rumble of engines. 3 black SUVs turned the corner, moving slow, silent, no lights, no sirens. The imposters' faces drained white before the first vehicle even stopped. My officers stepped out, real badges gleaming, real guns, holstered real authority. Within seconds, the 2 men were on their knees, their cheap badges glinting uselessly in the sunlight. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. "You came to arrest me," I told them quietly, "but you didn't even bother to check who I was." The tall one stammered something about being hired, then stopped, realizing he'd said too much. I didn't press it. I already knew who was behind it. The same woman who'd been trying to control this neighborhood since the day she arrived. 2 weeks earlier, things had started small, petty even. Sandra Whitfield, our new HOA president, was one of those people who mistakes control for leadership. The kind who carries a clipboard like it's a badge. She showed up at my house the first week after moving in, smiling too wide, talking too fast. "Just keeping the community up to standard," she said, pointing at a few leaves near my gutter. I told her politely. We all do our part. But she didn't like polite. She liked power. A few days later came the first notice: mailbox paint fading. 7 days to fix it. I laughed, repainted it that same afternoon, thought it'd be over. Then came the next one: unauthorized vehicle parked overnight. That vehicle was my own truck, parked in my own driveway. I went down to the HOA office, a rented cubicle beside the public library, and asked for clarification. She didn't even look up from her laptop. "Rules are rules," she said. "Who complained?" I asked. "That's confidential." I just smiled. Then so's my patience. After that, the letters kept coming. Petty little things, each one sharper than the last. But I wasn't angry, just curious. I'd dealt with people like Sandra before. People who crave control so bad they start believing rules are weapons. When the HOA meeting rolled around, I showed up. She tried to make an example out of me, calling out my address in front of everyone, acting like she was the sheriff of some one-street town. I stayed calm, reminded her that I'd followed every rule she cited, even quoted the HOA handbook from memory. She didn't like that either. Power doesn't like being matched with facts. When I walked out that night, Harold, my neighbor across the street, patted me on the shoulder. "You made her look small," he said. "She's gonna come after you for that." I just laughed. "Then she'll find out who she's dealing with." Turns out she did. Just not the way she hoped. The day those fake cops showed up, I knew instantly whose idea it was. Sandra had embarrassed herself at that meeting, and people like her don't forget that kind of bruise. What she didn't realize was she'd just turned a petty feud into a criminal investigation. After my guys cuffed the imposters, one of them started crying, saying they were just doing a job. The other kept quiet, jaw tight, staring at the ground. When I asked who sent them, he muttered, "A lady from the HOA. She paid us cash." By afternoon, we had their phones, messages, everything. Her name came up more than once. The next day, I watched from my porch as Sandra's silver SUV crept down the street, eyes darting from window to window. She saw the police cars, saw me standing there, and froze. I didn't say a word, just looked at her long enough for her to understand the game was over. A few days later, the story broke. Local news ran it under the headline, "HOA President under investigation after hiring fake cops to arrest police chief." You can imagine how that went over in a town this size. Overnight, her little empire collapsed. Board members resigned, neighbors stopped waving, reporters parked on her street. She tried to send an apology email, called it a misunderstanding, said she was just trying to protect community standards. I didn't bother responding. Some mistakes don't deserve replies. But here's the thing. I didn't celebrate either. I didn't want revenge. What I wanted, what I'd always wanted, was peace. One evening, a young kid from down the block came by, maybe 13, 14 years old. Nervous. Said his mom told him not to talk to me, but he wanted to apologize anyway. "People treated you wrong," he said, and nobody said anything. I looked at him for a second, then told him, "That's how most wrong things stay alive, son. Because good people stay quiet." A week later, the HOA announced Sandra's resignation in one dry sentence: no apology, no explanation. Just gone. And yet her shadow lingered. You could feel it every time someone hesitated to wave or made small talk that didn't land right. Control leaves scars even after it's gone. Harold stopped by one night with a six-pack and asked, "You think she'll ever face real punishment?" I said. "She already is. She's living with what she did. People like her fear shame more than jail." He laughed, nodded, and said, "You handled this whole mess better than I ever could." I smiled. If I'd lost my temper, I'd have given her exactly what she wanted. And that's the truth about power: it feeds on reaction. The moment you stop feeding it, it dies. These days, I still wake up early, brew my coffee, and sit on that same porch. My truck's still in the driveway. My flag still flies where it always has. The neighborhood looks perfect again, but perfection can hide a lot of regret. Sometimes at night, when the street's quiet and the porch light hums, I think about how close things came to spiraling out of control, all because someone mistook fear for authority. And every time the wind hits that flag just right, I remember what real strength looks like. It isn't loud, it isn't flashy. It's calm, it's steady. It's knowing you don't have to prove who you are to people who've already decided they can't match your peace. So yeah, that's what happened the morning 2 fake cops came to arrest me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw a punch. I just let the truth show up 3 black SUVs at a time. Tell me what you think was. I too calm, or was that the only way to win? Would you have handled it differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I've learned one thing from all this. Sometimes the quietest response makes the loudest statement.